A wedding is one of the most important events in life, marking a new beginning for a newlywed couple. Today, my husband and I attended my sister-in-law's wedding. Truth be told, I didn't really want to go, but I ended up going anyway. As the reception progressed and dishes were served one after another, I was somehow presented with a kid's meal while everyone else enjoyed upscale French cuisine. I was asking the staff about this mix-up when my mother-in-law approached me with a sly smile. "Are you enjoying the wedding?" she asked, looking down on me. Before I could respond, my husband spoke up. "My name is Olivia. I just turned 32, and I run my own original apparel company. I'm married to William, who is 2 years older than me. We got married 3 years ago after meeting at a department store. Most of my company's products are sold in apparel shops and department stores, and my husband worked as a security guard at one of those stores. Among the generally older security guards, he stood out to me because he was younger. I was 27 at the time, and he was 29. He was muscular but still looked slender. I learned after we got married that he used to be a firefighter but retired early due to a lung injury sustained in a fire. We met every time I went to pitch my products at the employee entrance, and he eventually asked me out to dinner. I was single then, and one thing led to another, leading to our relationship and eventual marriage 2 years later. Life with my husband is joyful. We hardly ever argue. However, the challenge is that we're both busy with work and have little time together. But I have no complaints, except for one issue with his family. He has an older sister, Sarah, who's 35. Sarah has been quite troublesome. It all started on a day when my husband and I both managed to get the same day off using our paid time off. "Why don't we go shopping since we finally have a day off together?" "Sounds great. I've been wanting new shoes, so that's perfect." We rarely have the same days off. Due to my role as a business owner, I can't easily take time off, and it's my fault as the owner. It's harder for me to take days off naturally, in a sense. Have the least priority taking days off. Plus, my daily tasks often keep me busy until the morning, so I usually miss my husband when he leaves for work. But when we were finally set for a date, our doorbell suddenly rang at 7 a.m. Who could it be at this time? My husband grumbled as he went to answer the door. "Hurry up and open up." Someone was yelling. "Sis," he exclaimed, and I followed him to the door. When we opened it, there stood my sister-in-law, Sarah, with a suitcase. "Sarah, what brings you here at this hour?" We were completely baffled. With a nonchalant expression, she said, "Let me stay here for a while, okay?" "Excuse me, what do you mean, sis?" Naturally, we were perplexed. She had just shown out of the blue asking to stay, as if it was the most natural thing. So we asked, "Why? What's going on? You didn't even tell us you were coming." "Well, I'm getting married soon, and the venue is close to your home. It's a hassle to come all the way here for venue inspections and dress fittings. Then I remembered you both lived around here," she said and started to barge in. I immediately objected. "Wait, we finally have a day off together, and we were about to go out." Hearing this, Sarah's face suddenly brightened. "Oh yeah, we're going shopping," she said, getting excited. My husband and I exchanged a look. Don't tell me you're planning to come with us?" I asked hesitantly. "Why not? Is there a problem?" she retorted defiantly at her audacity. My husband and I were dumbfounded. Then she added, "I want to go look at baby stuff. I want to make sure I'm ready for the baby." She seemed all set to tag along, taking the lead while we stood frozen at the entrance. "Come on, let's get ready. We'll leave by 9 a.m. How are we going? By car?" My husband's face darkened at her self-centered attitude. I rarely see him look so gloomy, but it seems he's never gotten along with his sister. He mentioned they used to fight a lot as kids. Is there any way you can leave? William and I just want to enjoy our day off together." I said. Sarah glared at me and snapped. What? You want to exclude me? Wait, you're from a single mother family, right? Yes, I am. So what? I replied. Figures? I've known some people from single mother families, and they lack empathy. They always look down on others. Her words were ironic as she was looking down on me while saying that. She claimed that single mother families produce judgmental people, and wasn't she doing exactly that? Unlike me, she had both parents. Her perspective was a baseless stereotype, and it infuriated me. That's prejudice. I'm not like that. Look, even William is uncomfortable, I said, looking at my husband. He was glaring at his sister. What's up, William? You got something to say to your own sister, she taunted. Of course I do. Please just go home, my husband said firmly. Fine, but don't come crying to me later, especially you, Olivia, she said, singling me out. Thanks for the warning, I replied nonchalantly. With that, she left without another word. After successfully getting rid of her, we had breakfast and went to the nearby mall. But the unlucky start to our day seemed to continue. After shopping, we decided to rest on a bench. Then we unexpectedly ran into Sarah again. Look who it is. The same too. Guess we ended up at the same place, she said. Sis, my husband muttered. Then we heard someone calling her name. It was a familiar voice. It was my mother-in-law. Sarah, let's go see those luxury bags over there, she said. Approaching us, his mother noticed us too. William and Olivia, you too, she said. Mom, he sighed, sounding exhausted. I felt the same way. Dealing with his sister was hard enough, but his mother made it worse. Why? Because she's simply unpleasant, and she quickly showed it. Is that bag from Infinity Tread Shoes? She pointed at the shoe store bag my husband was holding. Yeah, it is, he replied. She and his sister exchanged looks and laughed. Since when do you wear such cheap shoes? Look at our matching luxury brand shoes. William, choosing the wrong partner brings misfortune, she said, their contemptuous gaze mostly directed at me. It was clear I was the main target of their disdain. You talking about me? I asked impulsively. Hannah, I wonder if we are, my sister-in-law replied, dodging the question. She hurled insults at me. Then my husband interjected. Enough, Mom. Your consistent bragging about wealth has always been embarrassing and annoying. He was angry. A sight of him I had never seen. His job as a security guard lent authority to his voice, but it seemed to have no effect on these two. William, you were born into a wealthy family. Are you okay with this? Being with this uneducated, poor woman, his mother said. Education doesn't matter much these days, and Olivia is, my husband began. But despite them being his family, he prioritized defending me. That alone made me happy and strengthened my trust in him. But the two, faced with his opposition, cut him off before he could finish. That's not true. Dad got his job at a major company because of his education. He's even the vice president now and will soon be president. William, you graduated from a famous university, and yet you're with a woman like this? You've really fallen. My mother-in-law and sister-in-law treated me as an outsider, steering the conversation their way. Despite my husband's retort, they showed no remorse. To me, their nature seemed utterly rotten. How much do you earn, by the way? My dad earns 120. I began, but before I could finish, my sister-in-law interrupted. Wait, 120 a month? She laughed mockingly. Sorry, I should have been more considerate. That must be tough, especially for a dropout. Hang it enough. My husband tried to interject. My sister-in-law placed a hand on my husband's shoulder and said, Well, good luck. My husband was visibly angry, and I felt a surge of hatred inside me. However, these two seemed oblivious to our feelings, continuing their conversation at their own pace. Oh, you both better attend the wedding? Mom's preparing a grand event. Yes, we're sparing no expense for our darling daughter's wedding. You are coming, right, Olivia? The pressure from my mother-in-law made it feel like I couldn't say no. My husband, being family, would obviously attend. Reluctantly, I agreed to go. If my husband weren't going, I would never attend such a wedding. The day of my sister-in-law's wedding arrived. I finished my pile of work and even got a new dress with my husband for the occasion. Arriving at the venue, it was clear my mother-in-law wasn't exaggerating. The luxury hotel, the huge ballroom decorations, and the size of the wedding cake all spoke of extravagance. You both made it, my mother-in-law approached us upon arrival. Not that I wanted to make it, my husband muttered, his true feelings showing in an uncharacteristic weary expression. This wedding cost $100,000. We have 500 guests, and the meal is a special course by a top chef. Impressive, isn't it? Only we could do this, she boasted, looking down on everyone. Passers-by only offered polite, light smiles and nods. I was appalled by her need to flaunt her status. Why didn't you spend this much on our wedding? My husband asked, reflecting our reality. Our wedding was modest, costing $20,000. It was a simple wedding with only relatives and a few friends invited, but I was still happy with it. I was content, but in terms of treatment, it was indeed unfair. After all, my husband is her blood-related son. What are you saying? Sarah's spank Alex will soon work directly under Dad. When Dad becomes president, he'll be groomed to be a key player in the company. It's only natural we welcome him appropriately. My mother-in-law laughed proudly. While we were talking, my father-in-law joined us. Emily, it's almost time for Sarah and Alex to make their appearance. Aren't you going to take pictures in the front row? It felt like he was putting an end to our conversation, but it seemed he too was at odds with us. After speaking to my mother-in-law, he turned to us and said, "It's been a while, Olivia. You should feel honored just to be invited to such a lavish wedding. You'll probably never experience anything like this again in your life." Unlike my mother-in-law, he spoke calmly, but his words were laced with condescension. My husband couldn't help but retort, "Why do you have to say it like that, Dad?" My father-in-law replied with a cold expression, "Don't get me wrong. I never approved of your marriage. Remember the conditions I set?" My husband glanced at me briefly before looking away. What was about to be revealed was new to me. Turning away from me, my husband spoke weakly, graduate from a famous university, earned over $100,000 a year. That's right, you remember well. And Olivia, turning his gaze briefly to me and then back to my husband, he continued, Olivia did drop out, but it doesn't matter. She's making money. Before my husband could finish, my mother-in-law interrupted, shouting, "Daniel, look, Sarah has finished changing into her second dress." She shouted loudly, drawing attention. If it weren't her daughter's wedding, such behavior would surely have warranted complaints for being disruptive. Others glanced at her, forcing smiles. Called by my mother-in-law, my father-in-law said, "We'll talk about this later," and left the scene. My husband murmured, "Olivia is much more amazing than you think, Dad," as he watched his father leave. I felt comforted knowing he thought so highly of me. No matter what, he was on my side. That truth alone lifted my spirits more than anything. When the bride and groom appeared, the hall erupted in applause. The feast began with my sister-in-law's announcement. "We have a special course prepared by a top chef today. Please enjoy it." After her words, the wait staff began serving the food. However, my mother-in-law and a server were arguing close by. "Are you sure about this?" "Yes, just do it." "I understand," the server replied, looking uncomfortable. I soon realized this was the preparation for a prank on me. With the large number of guests, serving the food took time. When my meal finally arrived, I was taken aback. Huh? In front of me was a kid's meal. I immediately asked the server, "Excuse me, but there must be a mix-up." I questioned calmly, despite thinking such a mistake was unusual. The server looked at me uncomfortably, the same one who had spoken with my mother-in-law earlier. "Can you replace it, please?" I added as the server remained silent. Finally, he spoke. "This isn't a mistake. I was instructed to serve you the kid's meal." "What?" My voice of surprise made my husband join the conversation. "What's wrong, Olivia? Why a kid's meal?" He too was surprised to see my meal. Why is my meal different from everyone else's? It was more embarrassing than shocking. People around started to stare at me. "Why do you have a kid's meal?" my husband asked. "I don't know either," I replied. Then my mother-in-law approached, laughing. "How's your meal? Perfect for a dropout from a single-parent home, right? If you don't like it, you can leave," she taunted. Her unilateral spouting had me reaching my limit of patience. No matter how much I disliked my sister-in-law, I couldn't ruin someone else's wedding. I had been holding back because of that, but if the orchestrator of the wedding was causing the disruption, there was no need for me to keep holding back. Just as I was about to respond, my husband spoke up first. "Seriously, what are you doing? Aren't you embarrassed by this childish behavior?" His tone was calm but filled with anger, his eyes not smiling. I had never seen such a cold expression from him, as if he was looking down on an inferior creature. "What childish behavior? What are you talking about?" My mother-in-law feigned ignorance, but my husband didn't let her get away with it. Everything. Why serve a kid's menu to an adult? "It's obvious Olivia wouldn't order such a thing," he said. My mother-in-law retorted, her face turning red. "Marrying a poor woman, and you dare to talk back to us? You've become a mere commoner since you married her, away from our elite path." What a terrible way to speak. Though the notion that wealthy people are superior exists everywhere, my mother-in-law seemed to exceed that by far. I interrupted their conversation and spoke coldly to her. "True, I did drop out. That's because my parents passed away before I could finish middle school. But now I'm the president of a company." "President? I bet it's nothing significant," she sneered, unrelenting. Seeing this, I sighed. "I didn't want to do this because it's so childish," I muttered, prompting a curious look from my mother-in-law. "What exactly do you do?" she asked arrogantly, thinking she was in a superior position. It was disgusting to see such an attitude. "Daniel's company is Solar Burst Innovations, right?" "Yes, that's right, and he'll be the next president," she replied proudly. "Is that so? By the way, the current president, Morgan, is a major client of my company. The socks distributed in his company every month are commissioned directly to my company by Morgan himself." "What?" My mother-in-law was momentarily lost for words. The socks I mentioned, developed by my company, were exceptional for their comfort even after long hours of wear. Originally, the technology was used for t-shirts but was expanded to all clothing types. Everything Morgan wore was from our company. I was the one who suggested he try our socks for his entire company, and since then, our relationship had been close professionally. As mentioned, everything he wears is made by our company. That means even if you boast about your husband becoming the next president, if I report to Morgan about you, that might just remain a dream," I said. My mother-in-law's face turned pale as if a fever had broken. "You know him, the president of my husband's company. Did you know Morgan didn't go to high school either?" I continued. "What? He's one of those uneducated people you despise. Shall I convey your words about the importance of education to him exactly as you said them to me?" My mother-in-law pleaded. "Please, no, don't do that." Her demeanor completely weakened. People like her crumble easily when they realize their power is threatened. My father-in-law rushed over, and I repeated the same to him. "Daniel, I'll advise Morgan not to make you the president, I warned. Please don't do that, he begged. If that happens, does your pride not allow it? My onslaught was relentless. I was surprisingly calm while confronting both of them. As I stood up to my in-laws, the surrounding crowd became noisy. Of course, they did. Trouble had started just as the meal began, and only our table's progress had stopped. Sensing the commotion, my sister-in-law approached our table. "What's all this fuss about?" she asked, unaware of the situation. "Sarah, by the way, I make over $120,000 a year. My business is stable thanks to that. I didn't tell you the other day because you interrupted our conversation." Upon hearing this, my sister-in-law's face contorted. She stood frozen, gripping the hem of her dress. After I fought back, the entire in-law family looked as if their souls had been sucked out in an instant. "So everything we've been doing to you is—" Sarah started. "Yes, just harassment towards me and self-destructive acts that undermine Daniel's position," I declared. As I said this, my mother-in-law suddenly changed her attitude and knelt on the floor. She clasped her hands together. "I'm sorry, please, I beg you. Forgive me." I wondered if she had any pride left at all. Her readiness to get on the floor so easily seemed almost refreshing, but it still wasn't a reason for me to forgive them. "No, I won't. You've judged and insulted people based on their appearances. You should face the consequences. Please, we've almost used up our savings for this wedding. If I don't become president and get a higher salary, we'll struggle financially," my father-in-law said, following my mother-in-law's example by getting on the floor. My sister-in-law watched with a powerless expression and then asked weakly, "Huh, Dad, you're out of money?" "Yes, and used all I had for this wedding as a gift to you too," he replied. "What about our honeymoon funds?" "Alex's promotion." Her voice trembled. She was only lamenting her worsened position, disliking being brought down from her pedestal. It was all about her own convenience. She wasn't trying to solve anything by herself, always depending on others. "Wait, you boasted about being wealthy and were planning to go on your honeymoon using your parents' money. How shameful," I said. "What did you say?" my sister-in-law retorted, but she had nothing more to say. To all three of them, I declared, real wealthy people and celebrities don't brag about themselves. In other words, you're all just fakes. Know your place. My harsh words completely disheartened them, and my husband murmured his admiration. After that, the wedding was no longer feasible, and we suddenly had free time. We left the pitiful wedding venue of my sister-in-law. Later, I explained everything to Morgan. "Got it. So it wouldn't be fun for you if Daniel became president, right?" "To be frank, yes." "Don't worry. I won't forgive Daniel for insulting you, nor will I make him president. Maybe I should transfer him to an overseas branch." Morgan laughed as he said this. A week later, my father-in-law rushed to us. "Please convince Morgan to cancel the overseas transfer." His face was filled with desperation. Apparently, Morgan was seriously working to transfer my father-in-law to another branch. When I heard it was Brazil, a half-day flight away, I almost burst into laughter. In the end, Morgan didn't cancel the request, and my father-in-law, unable to go to Brazil, seemed to have resigned from the company. Additionally, there was a big commotion involving my sister-in-law's fiancé due to recent events. First, the wedding turned into a complete mess. Then the promised position at my father-in-law's company fell through when he resigned. My sister-in-law's fiancé originally worked in Italy. He moved to America for the wedding only to be caught up in this absurd drama. In the end, my sister-in-law's marriage was called off, and she was in great shock. She ended up in the hospital. My mother-in-law, affected by the downfall of my father-in-law and the mental breakdown of my sister-in-law, lost all her hair and now looks like an old woman. As my husband said, the lives of these three people who freely insulted others lost their shine in an instant, like a diamond that turns out to be just a lump of carbon. The wealthy life of my in-laws was nothing but a facade of pretense. Life can hinge on a single event, influencing the future. This applies equally to both good and bad events. This was indeed such an occasion, I believe. As for me, I'm using my savings to prepare for building my dream home with my husband. While my in-laws' lives were becoming more difficult, my business was generating more and more profits. Moreover, perhaps due to things settling down, I'd become pregnant. With financial stability and a growing family, we must seem like celebrities to my current in-laws. Still, I made a promise to myself to live happily with my husband and our future child, never becoming arrogant no matter what.